afternoon, welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to talk about round 9 of Sunway Formentera, the tournament that I just played, but the last couple of days of that tournament were so crazy that I had no time whatsoever to record a recap. So I'm home, I'm recording from home, and I'm super excited to analyze the game and go through it together with you guys, because the last 2 rounds were quite intense. Especially because the day after I had to rush to get home, and it was a really crazy past couple of days. But super excited to talk about this game, because after my win in round 8, I knew that I was going to play against someone pretty strong, and that was the case indeed. In round 9, I faced Manish Anto Cristiano from India, and I know that he is very, very strong, because I remember being at one of the side events and he shared first place with GM Thomas Sosa, and then before one of the rounds started, there was a raffle basically between the two of them, because they finished both shared first place. And then they had to decide who was going to be first place, and all the tiebreaks were even. So the only thing left was that they had to do a raffle, and then Manish became the winner of the tournament. So that was really crazy. So I knew that my opponent was super strong. My opponent was also a very strong 2400 player, but has tanked his rating quite a bit. Really strong, talented player, international master. And I thought, all right, let's see what happens. Let's see what's going to happen here. I was excited for the game, but when I saw what my opponent plays against e4, I was not so excited anymore, which is why I went for the move d4. So I didn't want to face any of his openings that he usually plays. So I decided, let's play d4 and just see what happens. Want to try to switch it up, you know? Knight f6 was played, c4, e6, and after knight f3, d5. I was basically trying to get into some queen's gambit type of position, because I always hate playing with it with black, and you just get really boring positions with the black pieces. So, you know, at least I feel like with white, I'm trying something here. So knight c3, bishop e7. I did not expect him to go for this. I was very sure that my opponent would go for a Slav structure. So after c6, I was planning to play bishop g5 and so on. But I didn't expect my opponent to play the move bishop e7, basically more passive and really going for the queen's gambit decline variation. And I thought, okay, let's play bishop g5, short castle e3, b6, and I thought this is actually what I used to play with the black pieces, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And now I'm playing this line against someone that probably knows what they're doing. So I thought, not sure what you're supposed to do with white. So I just developed with bishop d3. I was not entirely sure what I wanted to do, where do I want to put my pieces, because here is the thing is, do I take on f6, do I take on d5, or do I play bishop d3 and just let everything stay in the center? I wasn't entirely sure what I was doing here. Turns out that I believe someone told me that once b6 is played, you want to consider taking on d5. It's a little bit difficult for me to understand, because yeah, I'm so used to playing e4, so usually this doesn't really happen, right? Anyway, I played bishop d3, d takes c4, bishop takes c4, and I was quite happy about this, because I thought, okay, I have the center, but it's a very typical idea to take on c4, play bishop b7. Now the short castle knight bd7, basically it's hard for me to push e4, because first of all, the knight and bishop are covering this square. Also c5 is incoming, and I thought, I'm not so sure what I'm supposed to do. I played queen e2, simply preparing to move e4, and maybe bishop a6 could be interesting. Here my opponent went for knight e4. So now the question is, where do I trade? Or do I trade at all? Do I just retreat maybe? All the options are very appealing. I decided to go for bishop takes e7 at the end, because I thought, okay, I want to trade these bishops off, and I basically leave it up to my opponent. Does my opponent want to take back with the queen or take on c3? And my opponent took on c3. I was a little bit surprised by this. For some reason, I thought queen takes e7 would have been played. After queen takes, knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, knight d2 could be played, or bishop d3. I think I would have gone knight d2, and yeah, I would have tried to control the center, but I was not entirely sure what was going on here. I was not entirely sure. Once again, it really felt like we were approaching boring territory. This is one of the main reasons I don't like to play d4. Anyway, knight takes c3 is played, b takes c3, queen takes e7, and here we have this position where I have a quite solid, strong center, but this poor pawn on a2 is very lonely, and I can always be targeted with c5. And once my opponent gets those pawns going on the queen side, not sure if I'm really happy with my position here. So I thought I have to be a bit more active here, and I play bishop a6. So I want to trade off those bishops, because now my queen is infiltrated on the queen side, and all those light squares are quite weak, and maybe I can make use of that. My opponent plays c5, really good move, because, well, now, it's not so bad that the square on c6 is weak. It's not that weak anymore. I try to make use of it. I play queen b7, rook b8, queen c7, rook c8, queen b7. So I'm basically asking my opponent, if you want to draw, fine. You know, I don't like this position. It's just too dry. There's nothing going on. So be my guest. You want to repeat the moves, I'm fine with it. But of course, my opponent does not want to draw that easily and plays king f8. Really strong move. I did consider these moves, but I just didn't really know what else I was supposed to do. So I kind of left it to leave it to my opponent and thought, we'll see what happens if my opponent plays this move. King f8 was played, and here I played a4. So after a4, I'm just trying to push on the queen side, because once my pawn on a4 is traded, for example, for this pawn on b6, then I don't really feel like I have any pawn structure issues anymore. I have one big island over here, and my opponent still has those two islands, right? So that would be pretty nice. My opponent plays knight f6. I play queen a6 because I don't want to trade queens. If I trade the queens off the board, my opponent's super active, and I'm not really sure what I'm doing with my rooks here. The knight is coming to either e4 or d5, so I don't really want to allow any of this. So I play queen a6, rook b8 was played, knight e5. I want to be at least a little bit active. Knight e5 was played, I retreat with the queen. A little bit unfortunate because it basically admitting defeat. You just wasted a few moves over there, allowed your opponent to play rook b8 and rook c8, or, well, it came from here. And yeah, I felt like I wasted time. My rooks are still, you know, sitting there doing nothing. So I thought it is what it is. It's not the end of the world. If I'm slightly worse here, then so be it. My opponent went for g6 here. And here I started to like sense, you know, maybe I have some chances here, because now once you move pawns on the side of your king, then the king may get vulnerable. And I was seeing chances here. So I push e4, the knight has to retreat, and here I come with f4, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready for the attack. I'm so ready, so let's do this. My opponent takes on d4, but I don't care because I don't see how my opponent can make use of, you know, the c-file. He played queen b4. I was not really afraid of any of this. My queen just goes around, you know. There's always tricks for me. There's always ways for me to attack, and I'm not scared of the rook coming to c3, especially if my queen can get to h6 or something, or attack the knight on f6. I really like my position. So my opponent went for knight d7 after some thought, because, yeah, my opponent wants to get rid of the knight on e5. And here I was not entirely sure what to do. Well, at least I played queen h3 because I want to attack the pawn on h7. And after king g8, I was not sure what to do because I feel like there's something here. I feel like I should do something now. I really want to play f5. I really want to play either d5 or maybe knight g4. Maybe, do I have to retreat? Can I keep my knight on e5? Can I play queen h6? Maybe rook f3, rook h3, or the other rook? Well, the other rook is still, you know, under attack somewhat, so you have to be really careful here. I was not sure what I was supposed to do. So then I thought, after quite a long thought, I spent 13 minutes on this move, which was half my time currently. I was never really in time trouble this game because we're on move 25, 26, and we're both around 30 minutes on the clock. So I was never really in time trouble. But of course, in such moments, you want to take your time because this is quite a critical moment. I ended up playing the move knight f3 because I couldn't simply see what I was supposed to do. After moves like knight g4, h5 can be played, then I have to retreat, and I didn't really see what the point was of this. If we look at other moves, let's say f5, it was a little bit too much. I was thinking that my opponent can just take queen c5 check at any given moment, take the pawn on e5, or actually you can even take over here. After takes, you just take the pawn right away, and after f6, you may think, okay, the idea is you want to play queen h6 and checkmate, but my pawn can always give a check, king h1, and then retreat, if anything. The worst case scenario. So I thought, yeah, this is a little bit too much. I really wanted to push the pawn, but I could not quite justify it. And that's why I retreated. And I felt really bad about it, but I thought, you know what? My pawn made a retreating move. I will also make a retreating move. And maybe my knight has a better prospect on g5 somehow. My opponent comes in with the rook, and I was a little bit displeased by this because I thought, okay, I'm allowing my opponent to come on to c3 that easily. But I was like, I'm just going to attack with f5. Let's see what happens. So f5 was played by me. The idea is simple. I want to break the king open over here, and I'm not really losing much here, right? If my opponent takes, I take back, and I always want to take on g6, so it's a good try, right? But my opponent played the move queen f6 here, which was a mistake, and this was the moment for me to strike. Well, there's a few moves that are pretty good, but one move stands out, which is the move e5. And during the game, of course, I considered these kind of moves, but it simply seemed ridiculous to me that I give up the pawn on f5, and the best move here by far is queen h4. Really subtle move. I'm basically preparing knight g5, and my opponent has to find a way to defend against this, which is really difficult because the rook is attacking the queen then, and queen takes h7 is a big threat, so this was quite decisive had I found this idea. But it was quite difficult. In hindsight, it makes sense, but during the game, this idea was very sophisticated to me, a bit too much. And I was simply happy to take on e6 because I'm ruining my opponent's pawn structure and I see some chances here. F takes g6 was also possible, but I'm not sure. I didn't really feel like taking on g6 because I thought if I take on e6, I'm ruining my opponent's pawn structure, and that is good. But apparently after f takes g6, the reason why it's better is, it's really hard to say, but I think it has a lot to do with the fact that after h takes g6, then this queen is on the h file, and maybe after queen g4 and knight g5, black has a really vulnerable position here with the f7 pawn being targeted. Really difficult to see how black can defend against this. But at the same time, I thought this was the same for f takes e6, so hard to say what the main difference is between those moves. But anyway, my opponent went for queen takes e6, and after queen h6, I kind of gave up the advantage. The final way to maintain the advantage was the move queen h4 once again. The reason why I played queen h6 is because I thought, if you take my pawn, rook e1, and you're not going to have it so easy. Because the queen retreats, knight g5, and I thought, okay, I'm sensing something. I have 4 pieces ready to attack. 4 pieces. I'm threatening queen takes h7, rook takes f7 is around the corner. This rook can go to the 7th rank as well. There must be something here. My opponent took on d4, king h1, knight f6, and here I had 3 minutes on the clock. And I spent all 3 minutes to decide, what do I do? 3 moves look super appealing. And I thought that one of them has to be winning. Has to be. No way. And with seconds on the clock, I just could not decide what to do. And I played knight takes h7. Funnily enough, this turns out to be a brilliant move. But I'm not winning. As you can see from the eval bar, it's zeros. It's not winning. And as the moves were played, knight g4, attacking my queen, queen h4, knight f2, queen takes f2, queen takes f2, rook takes, king takes, rook takes, I started to realize, did I maybe spoil my advantage? Did I maybe make the wrong move? So quickly, let's rewind it quickly, because we need to talk about what those tactics were in this position. So, first of all, I hated the move rook takes f6 because queen takes f6, queen takes h7, king f8, and I couldn't really see how to proceed here. Do I give a check here, then queen g7, and yes, I have something with knight e6, f takes e6, and not rook f1 because then king g8, so you're losing the position that way. But you have queen f4, you can take the rook, and I guess there are some perpetual, you give endless amount of checks, but I did not believe in this. I'm down a pawn at least, so I thought this was not worth it. So then the next move. The move that I didn't play, knight takes f7. this move is very tricky. The thing is that the reason why I didn't play this is because it's not forcing. So I thought, what if my opponent plays any move? Any move. Like, you just think of any move. I don't remember, or I don't think I even knew what move my opponent could play, but I could not really quite understand what the point was of playing this. Maybe practically it could have been interesting to try this out. But basically any rook move here, rook c2 is completely fine, and I'm not really advancing much here. But it would be interesting after, let's say, rook f8, because then this rook is on a bad square, knight goes back to g5, and I'm threatening queen takes f8. It's still possible to hold this with black, but it's quite difficult. So maybe this was practically a better try. My opponent did have 13 minutes on the clock, so my opponent probably had enough time to figure it out. And we were on move 32, so basically only 8 more moves to go until the 14th move. So, yeah, in hindsight, when I played knight takes h7, I was thinking maybe knight takes f7 was better. And for the rest of the game, I was really feeling upset at myself that maybe I missed a really obvious win somewhere. But for some reason, I was really appealed by knight takes h7 because this is a very forcing move. I'm attacking the knight. If the knight captures back, then I take on f7. I mean, a rook sacrifice has to be played, right? Cannot miss this opportunity. And after king takes, queen takes h7, you don't have queen g7 because of the check here. And then on the next move, you take the queen. And if you play, let's say, king f8, then I can give a check here. I was still trying to figure out where the win is exactly because I'm facing queen and 2 rooks. But I had a good feeling about this, that there's some checkmate somewhere. You know, somewhere. Apparently queen g8 here, queen d8, and then queen g4, and this is checkmate. But I was not entirely sure during the game, but I knew that something somewhere is completely winning in this line. But then the problem is that my opponent does not have to take on h7. So that is the losing move. But if my opponent doesn't take and plays knight g4 instead, then the game goes on, because now my opponent's threatening knight f2 check, which was played, also a brilliant move. Queen takes f2, I have to take it. Queen takes, rook takes, king takes, rook takes, king h6, rook takes, rook e8. And here I was like, okay, I'm okay with the draw, but there's one issue. My opponent is the one attacking me, because if I take the rook, I get back ranked. So I play very passively rook g1. My opponent goes rook e4, and after h3, I finally reached move 40, so I didn't have to worry about the clock anymore. But after rook a3, I was like, oh, imagine if my opponent plays b5, takes the pawn, and somehow manages to promote the pawn. I could already see me lose a 3 versus 2 pawn rook endgame. Luckily I had 30 minutes to figure it out, but for some reason I'm just allergic to rook endgames. What can I say? But I kept my head cool and thought, okay, Anna, you have 30 minutes, make use of it. So I made use of it and played rook b1, attacking the pawn and stopping it from moving to b5. Rook a2, really sneaky move, because my opponent wants to put the rooks on the second rank, and I have to somehow try to defend this pawn, because otherwise I may run into big issues. Rook b3. So I'm basically lifting the rook towards g3 in case it's needed. My opponent plays b5, and I thought, oh, I did not see that coming, because if I take that, then rook e2, and it's probably fine. It's probably all fine. But during the game, I thought, oh, please let this not happen. I don't want to be dealing with these kind of things. So I just play a5, b4, rook b7. After rook takes a5, my opponent offered a draw, and I, of course, accepted it. Well, of course, I mean, I guess I can play on, you know, beat that guy. But during the game, I was also very, very bothered by my pen. I was basically struggling to write with these pens. It was really difficult because they were just not working. And I remember going back and forth to get new pens in the playing hall. I was taking pens from other boards, and I think I stood up at least 3 times to change pens. So I was also like really happy to finish the game and just go back to my room and rest. And I also knew that the next game was super early, so I thought, you know, I don't really feel like grinding this out. Usually I would say yes, but I felt like there was no point and I just wanted to leave, and I was just happy to take the draw and leave. So yeah, I was really happy with the result. Too bad that I missed one opportunity to strike, but it kind of feels good that against such a strong player, I did not run into any issues. I was not worse whatsoever, and I kept my head pretty cool throughout the game. So it's nice to have at least one chance, or you know, that it was not like a back and forth game. It was pretty steady. I played a really good game. My opponent also played a really good game. So a draw is fair. So really happy about that. Really happy about this game. And yeah, that meant that in round 10, I needed to win, because round 10, very important game. Well, this was round 9. In the next video, we'll talk about round 10. And in round 10, things were also pretty tense. So make sure to stay tuned for the recap of round 10. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Thanks for all the love and support. You guys are amazing. I'm so happy about my WGM norm. I'm not sure when I'll stop talking about that norm, but hope you guys liked the video. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.